This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 964, recorded on Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Is Earth the plastic placenta planet? Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Gigi, and tonight on the show we will fill your head with potentials, placentas, and hair. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Earth, Gaia, Mother, home, on the planetary crust, so much life does roam, surviving or dying, rare existence or thriving, connected by the fact that this rocky raft hurtling through space is the only place where you can find This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science. What's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science.
Good science, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. I'm so excited to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show ahead. And on tonight's show, I am joined by the amazing, incredible, hardworking, just multi-talented, so cool Dr. Jessica Hebert, a placental biologist who works at Oregon Health and Science University here in Portland, Oregon, and who has joined us on TWIS on a few previous occasions, sharing both science and music. You do both. You do lots of things.
Hi, TWIS. It's good to be back. It's why I know all the words to the theme song, because my band, the PDX Broadsides, played all of the music when we did the live show at Alberta Rose. And
pre-pandemic. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's been so long.
That was a minute ago, but
hot minute.
My bandmate Christian still pulls out Blair's Animal Corner in rehearsal, basically once a month, going, "This is the ish." So
it's so good, isn't it? It's great.
All of it is super fun, and I'm really glad to be back. So, hi, TWIS.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining me and everyone here tonight. I mean, we get a chance to chat with you and talk about science and so much good stuff. I want to let everyone know I have a bunch of stories about some earthy kind of things, plasticky kind of things, baby things, hair things, blood in space. What's that all about? And then we're going to talk about placentas and a lot of other cool things. And so I hope everyone's ready for that. Are you ready, Jessica?
I feel ready.
Feel like you've got it covered. Also, as we jump into the show, I would love to remind you that TWIS records live weekly on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Pacific time on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. You can look for This Week in Science to subscribe to us on those channels or on any podcast platform to get the edited version of the show. And we are on social media. Look for TWIS Science, a variety of places. I think we're TWIS Science on Twitch too, but go to twis.org if you want the general info and show notes and all sorts of other stuff. That's the main place to go. But now, it's time for the science. Da, da, da! I try to make it like a big, exciting thing, like science, whatever. Sometimes
Science!
There we go.
Something.
Little resonance and vibrato. And
we'll add the reverb in post. It'll be great.
More reverb, please. Just don't use the artificial reverb thing, because that's, then you're like a pop star. Okay. Earth Day's coming. April 22nd annually is Earth Day. So that's going to be in a couple of days. And I just wanted to start the show with the reminder that as much as we talk about climate science and issues related to climate change here on the show to let everybody know, what's happening and what researchers understand about climate change. Humans are having a planetary impact, but we also have technology that can assist us in reducing our planetary impact. And that's where I like to start, like to keep my brain, these optimistic, solutions-based thoughts, right? So I think like back in February, Oregon State University researchers reported on some carbon capture technology they'd been working on with vanadium, an element that they were able to use very well, and like nickel and other similar elements didn't work the same way to take carbon out of the atmosphere. That's not this week in science, but it's happening. And this is research that's been going on for a while. And it's just nice to know that there is progress being made. So I think that is one important point. Research progresses, and we are getting to points where this engineering and the technology are starting to work a little bit. How many batteries do you have or have you used in devices in your life, Jess?
In my life?
Oh, now in your house, like you have a child. How many battery operated things?
How many batteries have I had to keep away from my child in the last few years? Well, I mean,
And how many of them are recyclable?
Some of them, a few of them, or at least rechargeable. But
Yes.
normally I take my batteries and I take them. We have a battery disposal bucket in the lab, and that's where the batteries go.
The batteries and the chemicals, the elements, the compounds that are involved in them sometimes are toxic, cannot be just put into the ground or just thrown in the garbage. They need to be remediated. Lithium-ion batteries, well known for, historically starting fires in people's laptops and other, if not paid attention to appropriately. I had a laptop at one point where the battery started to swell so much that the case of the laptop actually broke.
That's time for a new laptop.
Yeah. I had obviously had not paid enough attention to that laptop in a while. Lithium-ion batteries are going to be used for a very long time. They're being used in cars like Teslas and other vehicles for electrical power. They're being used in laptops, in all sorts of devices. And these are the rechargeable batteries, right? But at a certain point, they reach end of life because at the electrodes, there's a chemical reaction that begins that starts to crystallize. There's like these fibers that start to weave and grow within the battery itself. And so those fibers take away the ability of the battery to have a higher efficiency. So how do we get better rechargeable batteries? How do we take the batteries like lithium-ion batteries when they've reached end of life and then potentially recycle them? Can we do that? Right now, the process involves taking the batteries apart, separating all the parts, and then putting them back together in different ways. So there's a lot of dismantling. There's a high environmental impact. There's all sorts of stuff going on, a lot of energy involved.
It sounds very expensive. So it's probably people don't want to do it because it costs money.
Yeah. And is there a way to do it better? Could we do it better? Well, researchers just published in Joule, which is a wonderful name for a journal, their work looking at these lithium-ion batteries and developing a method to recycle them more effectively and efficiently. And in their process, they have a recovery reagent that is injected into the batteries so that the batteries don't have to be dismantled. Nothing has to be taken apart. And this reagent reduces electrons and the carrier lithium ions, and it controls a whole bunch of things. So those fibers go away and the batteries get better. Dun, dun, dun. capacity is improved and everything's happy, lithium-ion batteries can then be returned to the world of use without all of the energy.
It looked like in this paper as well that if for some reason the lithium battery itself couldn't be restored fully, they could at least still use a lot of the parts of it in order to make another battery. So there's still kind of that ease of recycling.
And I think that's one of the big points here is that we, as we move forward, resources are limited, right? We just discovered, hey, huge lithium mine in Oregon. That's awesome. But still, these are all limited resources until we start mining off Earth, which, of course, is a plan by the New Space Movement. But we have to manage what we've got, not destroy ecosystems, use energy efficiently, make sure that things are sustainable. Like, how do we move forward with a cradle to grave ethos? And I am excited about this particular study because I think it really hits on that. It's what they say in the end of their summary. It's expected to achieve the shortest route in battery regeneration and provide new options for circular battery systems.
So cool.
Yeah. Your batteries don't have to they don't disappear. They're going to be part of a cycle, and you can, but of course that takes teaching people about all that kind of stuff. But anyway.
You have felt bad about your swollen laptop battery this whole time, haven't you?
I have. I really have. Why didn't I pay more attention? Okay. Earth Day also, let's talk about plastics. Plastics have been on people's minds for a while. We're finding them everywhere. Microplastics, macroplastics. People are trying to clean them up in the rivers, the oceans, all over the place. And a United Nations program called the Plastchem Project reported, this is out of Norway, NTNU Trondheim, the state of the science and plastic chemicals. And they've been trying to identify and address chemicals of concern. Previously, they had identified about 13,000 chemicals, and now they added more to the list. There's 16,000. Yay!
It's incredible.
3,000 more chemicals. Yeah. So chemicals in plastics, we know plastics themselves can be physically an issue for wildlife and ecosystems, but then these chemicals that are attached to the plastics in the production process, there are a lot of them that are really not good for the environment or humans. So we need to really think about what they are, how do we deal with them, and how do we move forward, because we're still producing about 400 million tons of plastic waste every year. It's a lot. Yeah. So anyway, talking about life cycles of batteries, life cycles of plastics are really important. And I am sure you have some thoughts about this.
How long it takes for plastics to break down. We also think about microplastics in the water and how they build up in the body. So in different organs, if they're connected to endocrine disruption, and endocrine disruption is a big deal when you're talking about reproduction or fertility or healthy pregnancies. So yeah, I think about microplastics, more frequently than your average bear.
Yeah, and there's been so much news recently about microplastics being found in placentas, in blood, in all over various human tissues. There was also involved in this plastic report there's some 68 or 69 forever chemicals that are also involved in the plastics industry that are
Forever
out.
chemicals.
Yeah, forever chemicals. They don't go away. They're not going to break down. A lot of these chemicals of the 16,000 that they've identified do potentially break down over time or get used in some way and aren't necessarily dangerous forever.
Studying plastics is one of those really cool things because we have such a limited environmental scope, like a time scope, to understand what they can do to humans and to our environment. So that's why places that have like environmental health and occupational studies are so important to help us get to the heart of what do we really get affected by long term. And it's, of course, removing microplastics seemed like a really good idea, but the science horse is kind of out of the science stable on that one, I think.
And then really, like, how? The microplastics are micro many times because they've broken down, they've been reduced. They're at this point where they're hard to filter out, and they pose a challenge.
Yeah.
I
think it was in this paper they talked about how you couldn't see it under a microscope, and you have to do a lot of very sensitive they did saponification in order to see it. Yes, science horse. If I had a science horse, its name would be Archimedes. Dr. Archimedes the Wonder Horse. One day I will be rich enough to have a science pony, but not today.
And I have a story to tell you about my science horse at some
point.
Good. It fits this whole pony horse. Yes, okay.
This is why we get along, because we dream of science horses.
It's tangential, but okay. Science horses moving away from plastics and chemicals in the environment. Let's talk about infertility. This is a place you dwell in regularly.
Yeah.
Yes. And this research actually comes out of OHSU. And it is a process that's a technique to treat infertility, not within the person's body, but by taking a skin cell. And unlike the Dolly the sheep stuff years ago, where they cloned the sheep to create a new baby sheep, in this case, they have used nuclear transfer technology. So they take the nucleus out of a skin cell and then put it into another cell and another donated egg where the nucleus has been removed. It's very similar to these techniques that are like the 3-parent technologies to get past mitochondrial diseases that have been okayed in the UK and some other countries. But in this particular case, instead of reverting a skin cell to an embryonic state or to a state where it can become haploid egg cell, they just go, hey, we're going to give you a new nucleus, little egg cell, and then we're going to tell you you don't want to be diploid anymore, so maybe get rid of some of those chromosomes. And I love this press release. It's because they coaxed these cells into becoming egg cells, to becoming haploid, coaxed them.
Because this work happened at OHSU, I can tell you that if any lab was going to coax chromosomes to go away, it would be Dr. Metalipov's lab. They've been working on this technique for a very long time.
And you would be right.
Yeah, how absolutely crazy and very cool is that, to be able to basically reduce the chance of rejection, reprogram somebody's own cells to become a meiotic copy of themselves, basically.
But in the case, a meiotic copy.
Yeah.
But so it's not cloning. It's not saying it is a cell that is a copy of yours and it's just going to be impacted by some epigenetics and like environmental stuff, right? In this case, it's half of your chromosomes in the appropriate way so that it can combine with a sperm cell from a partner and
Yeah,
create
that's the difference
an embryo.
between Dolly and this
Yeah.
is that they're still using IVF to
Yeah.
combine it with sperm. How cool.
Yeah. And it is cool. I think it's very neat. It's an alternative to some of the in vitro gametogenesis with reprogramming that other people are trying. But let me say, this is not in humans. This is mice. They have. This is a mouse study. this is this is very early stages mouse oocytes, um, and there's a lot more work that needs to be done before this turns into anything that can be used by
Yeah.
humans. How long? I mean, as a researcher, how long with a lot of these things? There's so many techniques that are like, oh, we did it in mice. And how many have you seen or known to come to fruition?
I mean, how much time you got? Like
Yeah.
lots of them. And sometimes mice are, you would think, a mouse, is that actually a useful model? Yeah, sometimes mice are a great model. I mean, for
Mhm.
pregnancy, for a lot of the things that I want to look at, like placental function, they're great. But for other things, like uh, overall brain development might
Mhm.
not be necessarily the same. Interventions are harder because they have shorter lifespans and shorter pregnancy spans. So, but lots of things that have started in mouse have gone to human, and Metalopov's lab has done human embryo work as well.
Yeah.
So I think, you know,
Metalipov has done some really incredible, that lab does really incredible work, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible, but what really helps is if there's already kind of a foothold to get there. So if somebody's already tried something similar in pigs or rhesus macaques, then it makes the translation go so much faster. And more, it's less like we're reinventing the wheel and we're just, you know, taking the steps that were laid before us and we're building on what's been there. So it gets a little easier every time to do that sort of translational work.
And I think that's really, the really important aspect of this is that, there is no like one end in sight. It's all a continuum, understanding the research that's come before and how you can use it, how you can base your work on it, how you can take it in a different direction or combine it with different techniques and do, find new ways to approach a problem.
That's the joy of collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Collaborate. Learn not to hate. Okay.
Totes. That.
Yeah. All right. News story. Also, let's talk about where hair came from. Where'd hair come from, everybody? Hair. It's made of keratin. Keratin is important for things like skin, nails, and hair. And keratin started somewhere. Where the heck did it start? What genes were important in allowing keratin to develop into things like claws versus hair? Researchers just published in Nature Communications their study of frogs. Well, because model species are fantastic. So, of course, we're going to study hair in Xenopus frogs. It's a model species. It's great. Xenopus tropicalis is also known as the tropical clawed frog, and these tropical clawed frogs have claws. And their claws, dun dun dun, are made of keratin. Okay. Phylogenetic analysis of the genes that lead to the development of the keratinaceous claws of the clawed frog led to an understanding that, hey, you with your pretty hair, you got the same gene, well, a homolog, which means it's kind of related to the genes that make these claws on the frogs, and it's called a HOXC13 gene.
Ooh.
A HOX gene. HOXC13 is important for the creation of clawification, cornification, the hardening of a surface that involves keratin. And so the researchers were able to develop an understanding by blocking these HOX genes in their clawed frogs and saying, hey, look, they don't make claws anymore. If we stop the HOX, they don't get claws. And
You
this
can't stop the hawks. Can't stop the hawks. Do you know why they call them hawks genes?
Tell me.
So it's short for homeobox, and these genes program your body pattern. So the fact that they're at the tips of the claws, like those are going to be at the tips of other people, well, I'm sorry, other organisms in terms of programming. So homeobox, it's all about body planning.
Right. And so they also saw these genes and the HOX and HOXC13 and keratin homologs at the toe tips of axolotls.
Nice.
We love axolotls. Axolotls, they got a lot of things, a lot of things to show us. So they were able to determine that these genes are prevalent and they are involved in this keratin defining formation function. So like body formation function, but in these particular locations. And so in their work, they're able to come up with the conclusion implications, not looking at actual like mammalian stuff and making people's hair go away or mouse hair go away, but the implication is that once upon a time in our ancestry, we all started with fish or maybe a tetrapod ancestor that gained one of these HOXC13 genes to go on to create what we now know as our lovely locks, hawks to locks.
Makes sense. And the hooves of ponies.
Yeah, so like you said, like the body function, it's at what places in the body formation did bodies need to protect themselves, and for what function? So
Yep.
for protection, for durability, or for I guess resilience against temperature
Or enemies.
or enemies.
Yeah. If you get bit in the tail, I imagine you would want to be able to get away.
Yeah, no. I'm at the point now where I'm like, my hair, I haven't cut it for a couple of years. It's been a while. I don't leave my house very often anymore. So I'm at that superhero point where it's like, you don't wear a cape. That's like the worst thing a superhero could do when they're fighting a villain. Like they're going to,
No case.
yeah. Or tie it up really tightly so that you protect yourself. But anyway, we'll move on.
So now it depends you. Interesting that you brought up axolotls. I recently read somewhere that it's pronounced asloloch.
Of course it is, and it's we Americanized it, and
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's a no waddle word for
Yes.
water dog.
Water dog.
Yeah, I hope I'm doing that right. Asloloch, but yeah.
I appreciate that, and for years, of course, it's fun to say axolotl because that's the
it's
sound.
a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also not recognizing the language and tradition and place that it came from. So I appreciate that.
Oh yeah. No, when we learn things, I don't know. The internet may have lied to me. The internet has lied to me before.
I'm gonna need somebody to really, really pronounce it for me so I can do it right.
We'll have to get somebody on the show who knows a little bit more about no waddle than either one of us do.
and the language and traditions and the influence on science, which could be really amazing.
That would be amazing.
That would be a cool conversation.
I'm sure
Let's
they are
do that.
out there.
Let's do
find
that.
them.
Let's do it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so moving from languages and keratin and our genomes and where our hair came from, let's go to outer space. People want to go to space. There's been a lot of research. There's this great article in Ars Technica Science, right, available now that discusses the many methods that have been researched to shield humans in space from radiation, from solar flares, from the high energy particles that could just, they go right through most stuff. We on Earth are protected because we have these awesome magnetic fields that are like, whatever. We've got Van Allen belts that are like, just follow us, just stay with us, be in the hula hoop. And it's great. But it's a lot of radiation out there. And if we want people in space for long periods of time, we need to protect them. We also need to protect our technology because the technology, quantum bits get flipped and then errors occur. And if you're depending on a computer system to keep humans safe, then that could be an issue. All right. That's a great article. Really, it's going to be linked on our show notes. But the story that I really wanted to get to is published in Forensic Science International reports because as more people live in space, of course, we need to figure out how to do forensic science in space. This paper simulated blood stain patterns in microgravity. They basically were like, hey, we know what blood stains look like in gravity. So let's try and have what happens to droplets. Droplets are different when there's microgravity. So the droplets are going to be weird and they're going to like distribute differently. So the blood stain pattern from a space murder, space crime scene is going to be different. And so now they are doing space forensics research to plan for the future because people suck. There are also accidents that we need to explain all the time, I'm sure. But yeah.
We haven't figured out yet how to get people to Mars or how to sustain life in orbit indefinitely. But we're going to certainly understand space murder.
We're gonna understand space murder. That's the thing. So
I love science so deeply.
I've been saving this story because it just is one of those stories that I'm like, we're, of course, and yes, okay.
How did they make the splatter every time?
So the splatter was created by the researchers using an ejection device to simulate the splatter, to simulate the impact and the way that the blood would be distributed. So in this microgravity that they used. They used a syringe and they applied pressure to the syringe's plunger and then looked at the midair breakup of the mass of fluid prior to target contact and then tried to analyze surface tension, cohesion, and connect that to the volume of the syringe and then how things changed as they splattered.
Wow.
Yeah. So they they looked at 21 stains measured and they used an angle impact of 90 degrees. No deviation in the calculated versus actual angle. And they also, let's see, this data was collected within the Roswell, Georgia Police Department's Forensic Science Laboratory. Roswell. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In horror movies, when they're trying to imitate arterial spray, you put the fake blood in your mouth and you spit. And it's the same ejection pressure and pattern as getting an arterial spurt. So,
Really?
yeah, I know. So the syringes are like, I was wondering if they had like the same hand pressure every time, or if they had one of those like micro pumps that was. Otherwise, you've got that human error. What
Right.
if like, you get way too excited about space murder and you push the syringe down?
I'm so excited about space murder. Squish.
I'm going to make that my ringtone after
No.
this episode. Dr. Kiki just yelling, I'm so excited about space murder.
That's a clip.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So, and they
Who is
used
it?
a computer program to measure everything. They used horse blood. Back to the science horse. And they used the NASA Flight Opportunities program. So they had parabolic flights that were used, and as these experiments were conducted aboard the zero gravity modified Boeing 727 aircraft.
Oh, they
So
didn't even need
microgravity.
blood at that point. On those parabolic flights, you could just study vomit spatter.
The vomit is not blood. It has a different surface tension, a different like mass and viscosity. So it's going to be different. Yeah. So they used the air drag was present in the cabin, but gravity was altered variable. And they say that they used, let's see, in the first and second experiments, 1 cc syringe containing the blood analog, horse blood, was used to project the fluid in a stream on a flight path of approximately 20 centimeters length that would intercept with a target of paper affixed to a foam backing board. They used the hydraulic pressure, and the syringe was only used to set the fluid in motion. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not seeing anything that says that it was not a human. Yeah, it seems like a person squished the syringe.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not seeing anything yet that. Yeah, anyway, they want to study space hemorrhages and blood spatter, and that's what they're doing. And
wow.
Space murder.
And they got published in Forensic Science Journal.
Yes. This is Forensic Science International Reports.
Interesting. How interesting.
Yeah.
Blood in space.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Yes.
Anyway, it's not the same. Surface tension is a driving factor to the shape and size of a blood stain without gravity. And so it's going to be different in microgravity than it is on Earth. They're going to have to use different reconstructive formulas when people do space murder. Those are my favorite stories so far this year.
I can't get over it. So, what do you study? I study space murder. Get out.
What? No, really?
That's got to be Department of Defense funded, like Space Force related.
Yeah, so this sounds like, so it was Roswell Police Force. If we go down to sources of funding, we see a research grant. No, it's funded by the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysis.
Of course it is. Oh yeah, I know them totally.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I love it and hate it at the same time. It's good.
There are grants that are very focused, very niche. It's the whole thing.
Yes.
That's what you gotta. That's what you gotta look for. Oh my goodness, everyone! This week in science. I promised Jess that this was going to be like an hour, and now we're and so I'm going to make this very brief. Thank you for joining us. This is the little break where I say, if you love the show, please tell somebody else about TWIS. Head over to Patreon, to twis.org and join our Patreon if you would like to support the show in an ongoing fashion. You can also click on the Zazzle link if you are interested in purchasing some merchandise that will also help support the show. We really can't do this without you. Thank you for your support. All right, coming on back, and it's all about Dr. Jessica Hebert. I'm going to reintroduce you right now to everyone. Our guest tonight is a researcher at OHSU, Oregon Health Sciences University, specializing in rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdomyolysis? Depends on where you came from. And renal function. She's a placentologist. That's a placental biologist by training, and an Oregon Museum of Science and Industry Science Communication Fellow, an award-winning science communicator and science musician. And while we've been talking through the start of the show, it has been a long time since you've joined us. So even though we have talked about your work previously, I would love you to, if you can summarize, what is rhabdomyolysis, and why are you interested in it? And are you still interested in it? And why am I pronouncing it incorrectly? All the time.
I think I've heard it both ways, as they say on psych, the right way and the wrong way. So yeah, thank you for that introduction. I am a placentologist by training, and but these days I'm a integrative physiologist. I work at the intersection of renal and reproductive health, and I do still study rhabdomyolysis. So rhabdo means muscle, myo from myoglobin, and lysis meaning breaking apart. So I study rhabdomyolysis because you can get something called acute kidney injury from it. Rhabdomyolysis happens anytime you get a crush injury to a muscle, whether that's from falling debris or earthquake victims or vehicle crash victims, or CrossFitters get rhabdo all the time because they overwork their muscles. Spin class enthusiasts, people who do basic training, people who get shrapnel in their legs. So all these ways that you can blow up your muscle, it releases myoglobin and other metabolites into the bloodstream. And when it gets to your kidneys, all of those things are pretty small, so they get filtered by your glomerulus. That's right away at the start of the kidney nephron. They get filtered right away. But then that little bit of tubule right there has a protein that attaches to myoglobin very readily and takes it up into the tubule, becomes reactive oxygen species and damages. So that's oxidative stress and damages the cell and causes leaking in the kidney. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. You tear a muscle, it gets to your kidney, and then you get that classic, what's called Coca-Cola or iced tea urine. It's very dark brown. It's kind of sticky. And if you see brown urine, go to a hospital. You have, your kidneys are not working right. They call it acute kidney injury because oftentimes people recover within about 2 weeks. The only treatment is aggressive fluid resuscitation. A lot of people get rhabdo or AKI in such a minor way that it's often subclinical and they can recover at home. But if you see brown urine, go to the hospital. Your creatinine is through the roof. They're going to want to treat you.
But this is like work. This is like you've worked out too much, not had enough water. You've pushed yourself too far. Like you've had too much protein, or is it a specific combination of factors that leads to this, or is it like really dependent on the person?
It's really dependent on the person, and I mean, you could say that the more muscle mass you have, the more likely it is that you could injure yourself and have muscle breakdown, have more severe rhabdo. But it's what they see in like basic training. There's this crazy figure. It's like 80 to 100% of women in basic training lose their periods.
Yeah.
And part of that is due to development of muscle and also potentially muscle injury. So it's this entire system of checks
Okay.
and balances in our body. When you throw it off whack by doing something like extreme exercise, you can
Now
cause.
I want to know about young athletes who are like who don't get their periods because for a long time they don't get them at the normal age or the average age because they are working out at such a high level, like gymnasts or runners or you
Yeah, they call it amenorrhea.
uh-huh.
Yeah, the loss of a period. Um, but when we
But
say,
if you don't get your period because you're doing that, like if it
yeah,
offsets the beginning of your menstruation, like ability.
yeah,
Yeah.
the things that we do to our bodies, being humans weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But
we,
the take home is be cool. Don't work out too hard. If it's brown, go to the hospital.
yeah, if it's brown, don't flush it down, go to the hospital.
Don't flush it
If
down. Go to the hospital though.
Yeah, yeah, also that would be fine.
Unless they
We
ask for a
say
sample, then don't flush it.
we say that rhabdo causes acute kidney injury, but we know that if you recover in about 2 weeks. But if you have any kind of acute kidney injury, you're at a higher risk later of getting chronic kidney disease. It's called
Mm.
SHRED, so stroke, hypertension, reproductive risk, dementia, and death. Your risk of all those things goes up significantly within 3 years.
Yay. What?
Yeah, yeah. And COVID AKI looks and functions a lot like rhabdomyolysis AKI. And when I started this research, I was doing a lot of placental research, but I'd also done some kidney stuff. And I met
Mhm.
a guy named Mike Hutchins. He's a critical care anesthesiologist over at the VA, and he had Department of Defense money to study what happens if you're in combat. You get shot in the leg, you're not anywhere near where they've got a whole lot of fluids to help you save your kidneys. Can we give a drug that stops that little part, that tubule part of your kidney, from taking up the myoglobin and getting damaged? And I said, that's very interesting. If they get all these long-term effects from getting acute kidney injury, what happens when they go to get pregnant? And he said, well, people don't study that because AKI is considered an old people's disease. And I said, old people aren't in combat. Old people aren't doing CrossFit. And so I made a model of acute kidney injury caused by rhabdo in mice. I know. And
This
studied
is why I asked you this
pregnancy.
question earlier. This is because
Yeah,
it's important.
and studied pregnancy, and we found a lot of things, including the fact that being born to a parents that had recovered acute kidney injury in their past in mice would lead to the pups dying 3 times more frequently in the perinatal period. Mom's kidneys don't work so well in pregnancy. She's got problems in the glomerulus, dumping a whole lot of protein out of her urine, including a very specific protein that we're developing an assay for now in human urine.
Well, okay. So then you
Yeah,
can actually see what's possibly going wrong. Like,
right.
yeah.
And detect it sooner so that we can, help develop a treatment. A lot of the mouse study work is coming out in a paper that was accepted today in Frontiers in Physiology. So, and it'll be published open access. So keep an eye out. I've got a Google Scholar page and I'm on PubMed, and I'll post about it on Twitter and Blue Sky and all the places too when it's officially out, but it should be out in at least preprint in the next couple of weeks.
I'm
Learn
so
all about
excited
rhabdo.
about that. I want to,
Me
yes. Okay.
too.
So, I mean, I'm going to go back in time and remember a, a demonstration you made talking about the placenta and pressure in the placenta involving like a squirt gun. And it was very well thought out. And,
Thanks.
it really demonstrated, the importance of pressure in the functioning of the membranes, the organ, the things that are working. And so, it seems like a natural follow-on that you would be looking at the kidneys, because the kidneys and glomerular pressure and all that, is it all a similar system with the integrative physiology and stuff that you're like, is this do they have similar genetic, cellular, like metabolic pathways? Like,
So
what's
many
happening
yeses.
there? Yeah.
Um, so the placenta and the kidney are cousins, is the easiest way I can put it. They have a lot of similar functions. So they both have to transport waste and nutrients.
Mhm.
They are important in exchange. But the big thing that people don't necessarily think about when we talk about the kidney is that it is a cardiovascular related organ.
Yeah.
It cleaves. So if you ever have known somebody to be on an ACE inhibitor to help lower blood pressure, all of that ACE, everything in the renin angiotensin system, a lot of that gets cleaved and is functional in the kidney. And that's what controls your blood pressure. And in the placenta as well, you have this balance of ACE and angiotensin 2 and other things that control blood vessel pressure and formation in order to adequately slow the blood down from the maternal side through to the fetal interface, so that
Right.
that exchange region gets bathed with blood rather than blasted with blood, which is why I use the super soaker and be like,
Yeah.
there's different levels of pressure. So if you turn mom's blood pressure up, that's called
Hypertension.
preeclampsia. Yeah, in
Yeah,
pregnancy. And
yeah.
you don't have the ability to slow that blood down.
Hmm.
So controlling maternal kidney function in pregnancy is also very important and leads to placental development changes as well. Yeah, it's all interconnected. It's pregnancy by committee.
Or organ committee, physiological committee, putting it all together.
Yeah,
Um, so your paper is going to be coming out. Is like, can you tell us, you know, implications that are, that you're really excited about, or anything? I mean, if it hasn't been published yet, we have, you know,
it
can
has been
can we
accepted, so I feel like I
can
can
we
talk
can we
about it
talk
a little.
about it, or is it under
Yeah, no,
is it under
it's
embargo?
cool. And I just presented a chunk of this at the Society for Reproductive Investigation meeting in Vancouver last week, where it won Best Poster. So people have seen it. It's out in the world a little bit. So long-term implications. There's been a couple of really great papers on this, including Jessica Tangren's group from UMass, who studied, they went back through a bunch of cases and said, okay, people, women who have ever had acute kidney injury, who have then gone on to get pregnant, what did their risk for preeclampsia or small babies or anything increase? And it turned out, yeah, their risk for all of those things increased. But what we would call classic preeclampsia doesn't necessarily look like what I'm seeing in my mice. The mice get higher mean arterial pressure, but not higher systolic pressure. Systolic pressure versus diastolic pressure in blood pressure. So systolic pressure is when your heart contracts. That's all
Mhm.
the force on your blood vessels. And diastolic is when your heart relaxes. And the diastolic pressure doesn't go down. So their blood vessels never relax.
Do you think that this is a mouse thing? Is this one of the differences between the mouse model and human or primate situations, or do you think that this is an experimental issue that, like, you need to, like, dig into?
I think it's totally translatable to humans, and
Mm.
here's why. So back in May of last year, you may have remembered a high-profile story. A woman named Tory Burch, who was on the U.S. Track and Field Olympics team,
Mhm.
died very suddenly of eclampsia at 8 months. And it turned out that two of her other teammates also died because of pregnancy complications. And
Wow.
even though they had access to great health care and their blood pressures seemed right, they were still high performing athletes who probably had a history of some sort of maybe damage to their bodies over the course of training. But there's definitely something going on with them that leads us to believe that there was a difference in how their pregnancies proceeded that we might not have caught on traditional like preeclampsia measures. So being able to see this model where we've got, a mild form of acute kidney injury that is recoverable, but pregnancies are still, not quite right. And the offspring aren't quite right. While most of them survive, they tend to have kidney issues
Other
in
issues.
later life. Even if those offspring didn't get AKI themselves, it's all developmentally caused. What can we do in order to detect as soon as possible that those pregnancies are in trouble? And if it's not blood pressure, is it a marker in the urine? Is it a marker in the blood? What can we find? And then how do we help it?
Yeah, it seems like elite athletes, they'd be measuring creatinine all the time because that's like muscle, how much muscle you're building. And, that's a standard measure for metabolic purposes. So what you're talking about with this new measurement for the kidney function and damage is possibly going to be huge.
I hope so. Creatinine is not a great measurement for kidney function for a lot of reasons. We don't have time to unpack all of that.
As a physiology lab instructor for many years, yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So the protein that we talk about in the paper, and the protein that I'll be studying in my new American Heart Association grant that I just received last week.
Congratulations.
You
Because kidney related to cardiovascular, as you were
exactly.
just explaining. Yes.
And I'm so glad that they were able to see that and put their belief into women's health, which has been a big topic lately. It's a small protein that if the proximal tubule isn't working, that first part of the nephron, then you see it in high abundance in the urine. It's a small protein called I always get this one wrong. It's RBP4, retinol binding protein 4. So it binds vitamin D.
Retinol. Yeah, retinol.
Yeah.
A? Vitamin A? No.
Vitamin A.
Vitamin A. Yeah.
You need all the vitamins, A.
A.
Yeah.
We're all Canadian now.
So RBP4 and then albumin gets dumped out of their urine in a huge amount, and albumin is also a pretty small protein. So, I mean, compared to the other proteins, it's like 70 kilodaltons. That's pretty small.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. Like what the size of proteins are, is how you use them to detect certain things, whether they're useful based on their size. Bigger proteins probably easier to detect in particular assays, but whole other area of study.
Yeah.
And you did just mention this next topic that we do want to talk about, which is women's health research in general and how work like yours is being supported by the American Heart Association, and also what the White House and the Biden administration have been pushing forward with their women's health research initiative. I mean, do you think there are moonshots and there are things that presidents do, and women's health has been at the bottom of the list forever. We know that there are attacks on abortion rights and women's health, reproductive rights across our country right now. We've lost them in a lot of places. And generally, research studies, because women do vary in their cycles throughout the month, as opposed to men who just, vary a lot during the day. We've been not studied, not involved in studies, and women, female mice, female birds, female whatever, like not included. It just hasn't been addressed. What are your feelings about this initiative and how the politics may influence research moving forward?
Well, I think it's about time that we put some money into these studies. I mean, so much of what we know about cardiovascular medicine has been designed around male subjects. The long-term effects on the developmental origins of health and disease have been done in men, not women. And that's, and when I say men and women, I mean, largely speaking,
From the
the
biological.
the assigned at
Yeah.
birth assignation,
Yeah.
but we also are expanding. Like the Society for Reproductive Investigation has an expanding area into trans medicine, which I think
Good.
is very important as well. Um,
Absolutely. Like,
so being able to understand reproductive sciences as a whole, how they affect everyone, is critical. I'm glad to see money going into women's healthcare, particularly into long-term obstetrics and long-term disease vectors, because they haven't been the focus. So this White House posting that you have up right now, I think this was from today, wasn't it?
a couple
Or
days
yes.
ago, but it's
So
been reported on like just in the last day or so. Yeah.
So President Biden has signed in a $200 million to the NIH to help support women's health research. And then the First Lady, Jill Biden, committed $100 million to women's health research. Vice President Harris has also been a part of the women's health research initiatives, and places that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be on super board with women's health research, like the military and the VA, have gotten on board. So I'm really excited to see that. I don't know if you know this, but women were not allowed to be combatants in the U.S. military, like actually in the field of combat, until 2015.
Right.
So what we know about the effects of women in combat are extremely limited.
Limited.
And
Yeah.
when they leave the service, they become veterans. And we know even less about what happens to women veterans who have served in combat. So I'm glad to see these initiatives taking place and supporting long-term health research so that we can actually do some good.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, there's so much work, for example, studies that have shown that uh, having head injuries at different points during your menstrual cycle can influence the way that your immune system reacts to the or the the inflammatory aspect of your immune system reacts to that head injury. And so an accident at one part of your cycle can be more disastrous or impactful than at another point in your cycle. Is this the same to your kidneys? Is this the same to other organ systems in the body? Like estrogen is a huge part of the inflammation cycle. Like all of our hormones and the way they work together with our immune system are so we know so little,
Yeah.
especially because so much work it's just been limited. And
It's interesting you bring up hormones.
yeah,
So estrogen is renoprotective. It protects your
yeah,
kidneys. So if you get some sort of kidney injury while you're pregnant, your kidneys typically do a little bit better. But I gave a talk on some of this at the UK preterm birth conference in January. And I'm not a preterm birth person, but my mice are born small, which is important. And I had so many clinicians get excited in the room because they went, our patients get AKI in labor all the time. Do you think that's important? And I could have just dropped. I had no idea.
you're like, yes, it is.
Yeah, that would be
Yes.
really important to know, because especially like the recovery and what does that mean for, like loss
For
of blood
recovery
or
care, breastfeeding
recovery from.
later, for
Yeah.
fluids, for all the things.
And not even like recovery related to childbirth, just recovery as a human. Like, what is that going to do to your long term blood pressure? To your, like, are you going to be more likely to get CKD? Like, there were so many questions that we hadn't thought about before. So now that is an aim on another project I'm working on that we can talk about anytime, but I would like to find a way to help protect women from getting AKI while they're in labor. Because, oh, is that important? Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, and so, like, we the American healthcare system, we know that certain populations of people, Black women specifically, have a higher rate of death during childbirth. We know women die a lot more in childbirth in the United States than other, like, really advanced Westernized societies. What the heck is going on? Is it because we're not talking about this kind of stuff? Is it because we're not paying attention to these particular factors in people's lives, to previous injuries or previous experiences that might be impacting blood pressure, kidney
Yep.
pressure, glomerular function? Like,
Partly that, partly, a system that has been uh, designed to be inequitable for healthcare over years and
general,
years and years.
yeah,
And also a lot of distrust amongst Black and people of color, Black people and people of color who don't want to be involved in research studies and who can blame them.
who
We have not necessarily, as white
we haven't done
gendered,
anything to make them
gendered a
trust
lot
us.
of trust. Yeah.
Ugh,
So we need to expand our knowledge about what affects these communities in particular, and it's not just an inequity of where health systems are available. As a woman pointed out at a recent meeting I was at, like Beyonce had access to healthcare. Tory Burch had access to healthcare. They both had pregnancy complications. So it's not necessarily about access, but it could be about historical access.
and
And
awareness and what the caregivers are paying attention to
absolutely,
in the moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions, both scientific and social, that go together, but they're all important.
I feel like a lot of times biology is an area, it's not a hard science, but it's one of the sciences that it's like, oh, when you go to school, it's like, oh yeah, hard sciences, they're the ones that matter. And like the soft science, psychology, social science, blah, blah, blah. What do they know? But I feel like the integration of all of these things now in a civic manner where they allow people, scientists, communities to work together is needed. And do you see that happening at all with Portland, OHSU, or just the general community you're working in?
Like an overlap of the humanities and the sciences.
Yeah,
Um,
like you said, like the social factors and the physical factors that doctors are going to be looking for, right?
some, and I think this is why conferences are really important. I don't know that I would necessarily go and see like a psychology of gynecologic health talk if it was being offered at a local university. But when you're at a symposium, you go, yeah, I want to learn more about that, or about
Mhm.
global healthcare initiatives. And these are all, that's an important intersection that I think we're sort of missing during the pandemic. And COVID isn't over, but we are starting to reconvene,
Yeah.
and getting some of that face-to-face time and those connections, I think, will help us. Um, it's it's hard when you're embroiled in science to see beyond your own front door.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that it's a real challenge when the push is constantly on, like, get the next grant, get the next grant. Um, So initiatives like what the Bidens are doing right now will hopefully help take the pressure off a little bit so that we can think outside the immediate box and look for some of these more radical transformations to our healthcare system.
And hopefully lead to more collaborations between researchers like yourself. You're also a communicator, but you can't do all the communication when you're doing the research. So
Yeah.
you need to have the ability to collaborate with nonprofits, with community groups. Like, how can we get more of that happening so that progress can really be made?
More money.
Mhm.
Application
More money.
More money.
$dollar bills, yo. Here we go.
Please. Yeah. I think that if you don't have someone in your research sphere who is in charge of your science communication and good at it, then you should hire people who are. Yeah. Dr. Kiki has a shingle.
Oh my gosh. I did want to ask about the plastics in the placenta research, but I do know that I've kept you much longer than was discussed. So, do you want to go there, or do you want to discuss anything else before we end the show?
My thoughts about plastics in the placenta can be summed up pretty briefly. It's bad, okay?
Okay.
Well, especially so the placenta is my favorite temporary organ, because it's the only temporary organ. And the fact that we see buildup of microplastics in the placenta at rates that we would see buildup in some of the other tissues of the body over the course of 40 weeks is a little bit scary. And microplastics come with endocrine disruption factors. So if you have, this very carefully balanced pregnancy by committee going on with estrogen and angiotensinogen and all of these factors working together, disruption of that is going to disrupt the potential for fetal development. So it's not great. But I think that research is still pretty bleeding edge because there's only so much we understand.
And there's only so
bleeding
many.
edge, like space murder.
Exactly. Yeah, it is on the edge where there's only a small number of papers that really are heading that direction, where we're showing the number of papers that actually support that microplastics are deleterious to animals in the oceans or the environment. It's very small. Physically, yeah, it's bad for turtles and fish to swallow plastic. That's bad because then they're not eating food. But what you're talking about, the chemical factors, the endocrine disruptors, all the others, we need more work.
Yeah.
It's not enough yet. It's not enough.
Continue to talk to your lawmakers about getting money to science. And also, if you happen to have a wealthy relative who wants to donate to a foundation,
Yeah.
I love money and making science, and I would be happy to tell you how to do that. But yeah, you can. Did you know that foundations will let you just give them money to do things?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yes.
think
And
everybody knows that.
yes, you can also start your own trusts if you are wealthy enough to start a trust for a particular function, and can get a nonprofit or a foundation to be a manager of that trust and how it gets distributed. There are so many things, but
That sounds really nice. How do I get one of those? Why did I choose this life of crime?
Let's talk about that. Doing the science, communicating the science, neither of these things well funded at this point in time.
No, but we do it because we love it and because it needs to be done. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And you are incredible. You're absolutely amazing. And I know that you're going through it with a 2-year-old, your family. You've been doing postdocing, you're looking for a professorship, associate professorship, all the things and the grant funding and the research and the music and the pirating and all.
my life is weird. It's true. But if I didn't have some of the weird outside of it, I wouldn't survive
Yes, good balance.
the rest of it. And like I said, found out that I got American Heart Association Career Development Award, and that helps tremendously. And I will be making a job transition here in May. And I'll be leaving the world of postdoc behind and joining the faculty at OHSU Nephrology. So that will make my life a little, I'm very excited. Nephrology will be a good home for me.
It will, and I can't wait to introduce you with a new title.
Yay! Yeah,
That's going to be exciting.
Tentatively May that I'll be Dr. Instructor Hebert.
Dr. Instructor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me tonight.
Of course. No, it was my pleasure. I love you. I love This Week in Science. Your audience is always the best. So it's a pleasure to get to come on and talk about not just my science, but the cool stuff that's happening out there that we read about and then we don't have anyone to yell at about. So let's yell at each other.
Space murder!
Space!
It's space!
I can't believe that was... I'm both glad and horrified that space murder forensics was
I
funded.
saved it just for you.
Thank you. I feel blessed. Hashtag blessed by space murder.
Oh my god. Do you have any upcoming things, media links, anything you would like to share with everyone before we go?
Do so I have my paper coming out in Frontiers in Physiology very soon. But in the meantime, you can check out my Google Scholar. I'm also Dame_DNA on Twitter. And my band, the PDX Broadsides, we sing about science and space and fandoms and feelings and Nathan Fillion's butt. We're going to be doing a set at the Alberta Rose Theatre in Portland on March 31st. As part of a benefit for a place called the Steep and Thorny Way to Heaven. There's my Google Scholar. They were damaged by the ice storms in Portland in January, and they lost their performance space, and we're very good friends with them. So it's a resurrection benefit on Easter Sunday with singing and burlesque and opera with suspension and I can't interactive.
Wait.
Yeah.
Opera with suspension?
Yeah, she's like a suspension artist and does ritual opera. I can't even begin to describe it. It's incredible. And immersive Shakespeare.
Amazing.
And it's pretty crazy. So Resurrection at Alberta Rose on March 31st. Those tickets are available now. And we've got some special songs ready for you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't wait. All right. End of the month. Nerdy, wonderful, exploratory, adventurous fun with music. And again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Dr. Jessica Hebert. All of your knowledge and experience is much appreciated here. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
All right, I'm going to do the outro in the show, and you, if you'd like to stay for all of it, you may. If you want to like cut and go family, I
will stick around for like 5 minutes, and then I hear my son doing nonsense.
That's what children do. Nonsense.
After the outro,
developmental stuff.
After the outro bit, if we're just chatting, I'll open my door and he can come say hi. My little baby man. Okay. Do the thing, the official thing.
I'm going to do the official thing right now. Okay, everybody. I really, really love that you all joined us for this episode. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. And for everyone out there, make sure that you do go check out PDX Broadsides. Look for Dr. Jessica Hebert at, on the Twitter, Dame DNA on the Twitters, and the Blue Sky is also there, because Twitter's weird these days. We also have a lot of shout outs to do for people who support the show, all of you in the chat rooms. all the chat rooms. I see you. Thank you for being here. Discord, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. You're all here. I appreciate it. Thank you, Aaron, Lore, Gord, those of you who have been involved in helping to keep the chat rooms happy, nice places to exist and be and converse. Fada, thank you for your help with show notes and social media. I know you did a little late switching of stuff to help get the word out that Dr. Hebert was joining us this evening. Identity 4. Thank you so much for recording the show. And Rachel, thank you for your help in editing the show. And finally, I do need to thank our Patreon sponsors, because what could we do without all of you? Thank you to Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, George Corris, Pierre Velazar, John Rataswamy, Chris Wozniak, Vigard Shefstad, Jonathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Reagan Shubu, Sarah Forfart, Don Mundus, PIG, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stroops, Andrew Swanson, Fredis 104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Marcus and Flo, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard Brendy Minish, Johnny Gridley. You were in town this week. Where'd you go? Remy Day, flying out. Christopher Dreyer, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Rick Ramus, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Alon Makes, EO, Adam Mishkan, Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, David Silverlee, Patrick Beccararo, and Tony Steele. I swear my pronunciation changes throughout my cycle. Some weeks I'm better and some weeks I'm worse. It's a fascinating thing that I think somebody should study. Beyond that, Patreon sponsors, we cannot do this without you. So thank you all for your support. And if everyone out there would love to join the Patreon sponsors, head over to twist.org, click on the Patreon link, and help us do what we do. You can choose your level of support. It's pretty awesome. On next week's show, we're going to be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from our Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. Woo, 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 all these places. But if you want to listen to us as a podcast that's edited and a little cleaner, just head for wherever you go for podcasts, not Google Podcasts anymore because they're shutting down. Find another podcast platform. Wherever you go, look for This Week in Science. If you enjoyed the show, share it with your friends as well. Get them to subscribe. Like, take their device and subscribe for them. Help them make it happen. For more information on anything you heard today, our stories, links, show notes, stuff about Jess, it's all going to be there. twist.org. That's the website. You can sign up for our newsletter there. Occasionally, we actually send a newsletter out. And, you know, we love your feedback. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover, address, suggestion for an interview, someone else who should be a guest, let me know. You can do a social media account. I don't know if I'm there anymore. Send me an email. It's all there. Put TWIS in the subject line so your email doesn't get spam filtered into a malfunctioning glomerular nephron tubule thing, protein, whatever. You don't want it to go there. That'll be a problem. We look forward to discussing science with you again next week. And if you've learned anything from the show, remember, it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
science. This week in science. This week in science.